Yeah, so does anyone want to jump in? I want to see some raised hands. Let's see. Steven, hello. Hello. Can you hear yourself? Is the echo fixed?
Yeah, I don't really hear myself. I'm just gonna speak a bit and see if I can
Yes.
hear myself. No, I don't think I can. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
So,
perfect. Come in. So, what do you think? Was it the first time you read the book, or I'm
funny
assuming it's a
enough,
reread? But yeah,
yeah,
go on.
this was actually my second read. The first time I read this was in middle school for some reason. Like I don't know why. Because it wasn't a book I was assigned for class. It was a book that I wrote. I read purely out of my own like interest when going through the library. I think it was because like there was this phase I had where with the books I was given to read, it was stuff like Tuck Everlasting or those types of like romantic types of stories about youth that I guess I was just interested in for some reason. So when I read
Mm.
Wuthering Heights, I admittedly, yes, it was a book that I could I could get the narrative on a basic level, and I thought it was interesting as a teenager to see a story purely told through the perspectives of people recounting the narrative, and recounting people's lives through what I would still see as a very subjective point of view, while both revealing the characters that, for instance, of course, we're going to talk about Nellie a lot and Nellie's perspective. I think it reveals
Hmm.
as much about her as it is about the people she's speaking about with Heathcliff, Catherine, and everyone else. And now rereading it as an adult, with all that in mind, and me becoming more sophisticated in, especially of style of
Mm.
writing, because I think that's something I admittedly was very ignorant of when I was younger. Is like not understanding what can make writing be very stylistic, compared to like any visual medium. And so now reading this and getting the story, even as an adult, I find it so interesting to myself of how legit, like for like the first 200, 300 pages of the book, I'd say I really liked it. I really do like it. And
I love it. It's great, isn't it?
like,
It's a
but
great novel.
I still
Is
find
go on.
myself frustrated. Like
Okay.
I was a little frustrated because it is a story with characters that I admittedly, like, this can be the main thing that turns people off, like, from reading, and which I can totally get, of how they can be described, for lack of a better term, insufferable. And
I
it
think
is
that's a good word. It's a good word
yeah, it's
to
yeah, very
describe.
you describe. And thinking about it, like, I myself was thinking, like, what was the point of this, and why is this book the way it is? And then I think legit, the moment we get the chapter 18 and 12 years later of seeing what happens, basically, quote, this thing that most people ignore about this book, that's when I realizing that as much as there is a darkness and a very a bleakness to the way life is presented through these very, again, insufferable people, I think what it then says about the next generation, and what it says about, of Kathy and Linton, and about what I would say. I said it in the chat of how, how I would phrase it as, I don't think it's a love story as in a romantic definition of a love story.
Yes.
I would think it's just a story about love, not just romantic, but platonic, familial, like even beyond that. It almost taps into every aspect of how people can love each other, and both from a healthy and unhealthy way, both from when you're very young as a child to when you're like grown up as a very experienced adult, and seeing
Mm.
how generations play off of one another, and seeing how the book ends. I think really highlights that that there is a very beautiful perspective, and I think a hopeful perspective in showing how, despite this cyclical form of like this like kind of like this inner mental violence that is brought on through every generation, from father to son, from sibling to sibling, there is a possibility that that can stop. Or at least there's a generation that can actually love in a healthy way, a pure, healthy, divine way. And knowing that through, like, particularly, we're going to speak a lot about Kathy and Linton. I think it was just a beautiful book that won me over again.
Mm. Yeah, I think you also have to resist when you're reading Wuthering Heights. You do have to resist an urge to try to domesticate the story and domesticate the characters and try to civilize their feelings in many ways. Especially when we're talking about Heathcliff and Cathy, the original ones, yeah, and the idea
Yeah.
of the generational trauma that comes with it and the generational bonds, I think is fascinating. Did you pay attention this time? I mean, for me, in this reread, one of the things that also stood out, besides the whole point of nature and when you're talking about this idea of love that transcends just the metaphysical love or the familial love, even, but also one thing that really stood out to me was the idea of class, which
Yes.
more than ever, like reading this book, and I don't know, I feel like I always been very class conscious, but this time I was reading and really this idea of Heathcliff being a force that cannot be contained, but also
Yeah.
not explained, not simple to.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know where he comes from exactly. I mean, his lack of connection to a
Yeah.
certain past is also what gives him both strength and weakness, I think. And it also what makes everyone treat him differently,
Yeah.
and in a
Absolutely.
way, yeah, in a way there is a justification in the future generations. You see there is almost a justification for the existence now, and they have a past, they have a link to that land, and they link a link to a past that is robbed from Heathcliff. Gordon wants to come in as well.
Yeah. I wanted to say something about class first,
Yeah, go on,
because
Steboy, and we can hear Gordon after.
like, yeah,
Yeah, go
because like
ahead.
yeah, hi Gordon. But this is literally,
Hi.
like, I was talking this about Forrest when we were just on the regular chat like 30 minutes ago, about how, yes, like, this was, I think this is a novel about class, particularly how class really is, like, I think, if anything, like, people are trying to, there's always this debate, with people who read the book, who is the antagonist of this book. I think it is the system that is the main antagonist of this book. I think it is just the overall, like, like that neoclassical, like, very, very much so of its time system of class that still ripples on today, in how, this idea of, the status you have as someone with wealth, with all this importance, with how much land you own, I think is almost this drug, this poison that can really damage the soul if done to an obsessive degree. Again, like an obsession gets a lot of how, and we see this especially with Heathcliff, the obvious one, of how, with Heathcliff, it's like, for him, the only way he can truly, seek what I think he sees as, like, a true form of justice, is to battle against everyone by just playing with the system, by getting this wealth, by getting this influence, by buying the land. Because to him, if he gets all this material power and dominion over everyone else, then he will be the most satisfied, that he will truly get revenge amongst those that, like, that he feels has wronged him, that he feels that he is deserving
Yeah.
of this power. And I think it plays a lot into that, with every character. Funny enough, I mean, like, it reminds me a lot of why I think that's also a main attribute to Barry Lyndon, both the Thackeray novel and the Kubrick film, because that is also a story about a man who comes from basically nothing and becomes a uber wealthy elite person. But no matter what status Redmond Barry finds himself in, he still is a man that is playing with the system. It's a
Yeah,
very,
I think
I think it's like even more so, like much more so than Wuthering Heights. It's a very anti-existentialist story. Both Thackeray and Kubrick are doing
yeah.
that, basically saying that like much like painting, like you are just of a status where you cannot escape your fate. You cannot escape who you are, no matter how much you try and change. You will still be what society deems you as, a broad archetype of just a peasant, a nobleman, and anything in between.
Yeah, Victorian society really like it's so. I mean, characters are constantly aware in Wuthering Heights of who's above, who's below, who comes from where. Like an outsider status immediately imprinted into Heathcliff, which is also an outsider status that he embraces in his soul deeply. I think it's interesting to notice that as well because this was something that Corral said in the chat now. You know, in Harrington also he was cultivated as a brute, like by encouraging his worst behaviors and being denied letters. Is also true because this idea of class molding and molding who the person, the outcome, right?
Yeah.
I want to hear Gordon. I don't know. He came up a bit earlier, and we might have completely moved from the point that he wanted to talk about.
Well,
No,
Go on,
no, we're
Gordon.
good. This is actually my first time reading the novel. Am I too loud? How's my audio?
No, it's good.
it's fine.
Okay. So this is my first time reading the novel, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I actually didn't really even know what it was about until lately.
Okay.
Um, I guess like it was always a book I wanted to get around to, but wasn't like at the top of my priorities. Maybe like as a teenager, I always saw it, but I was like, oh, I'd rather read Frankenstein or Edgar Allan Poe. And although this novel probably has more in common with Edgar Allan Poe than it does like a Jane
Oh
Austen
yeah,
novel or something.
absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, and yeah, but I am really glad I read it because I think it's great. I kind of like what you were saying earlier, Louisa, how
Yeah.
like it is a love story because like I thought it was. I went into it thinking it was a love story, and then I'm like, oh, it's not really a love story. It's more of a ghost story. But the thing about it now, it's kind of like it kind of blends genres in a way. It is sort of like a Victorian romance, but it's also kind of gothic. It's a ghost story, and yeah, I really loved it. It's written really well. I do love how I am fascinated with these characters, and I do like them. I like them from like a character standpoint, even if they are awful. But there's a little bit of sympathy in there. Like I wanted to talk about the character of Heathcliff because I'm fascinated with him on a number of levels. Like just as far as like character development, but also like what he represents. Like one thing I'm curious about is just why Mr. Earnshaw brings him home in the first place in the very beginning of the novel. 'Cause like he doesn't seem to have he just kind of brings him home, and
Mhm.
the only explanation I can give is that like he sees him as like a pet. Even if you watch the black and white film version with Laurence Olivier,
Yeah.
it kind of leans more into that. He's like, oh, look what I found, and like that's really it's kind of it's still bizarre though because like it's a person, and I guess yeah, sure, back then they used to otherize different races, but still like it's just fascinating to me why he brings him home, why he's so fond of him. I've seen some people speculate that Heathcliff is his bastard child, his illegitimate
Hmm.
son, and I think that may be a good explanation. But even then, there's a lot of ambiguity to him, like in terms of like what race he is. There's when he disappears for 3 years and comes back, like nobody knows what happened to him, and nobody knows like what experience he gained to take advantage of the people around him to get revenge on him.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's interesting because like as the novel goes on, like Heathcliff just becomes a truly evil person. Like he's truly despicable, and you could say irredeemable, but like there's always that thing, there's that memory lying within you, and his youth, just all the things that he went through as a youth, and that kind of sits with you during all this evil. So like as much as you despise him, you kind of understand why he is the way he is. and again, that leans more into the themes of class and generational trauma. And I like what you were saying too, Esteban, about there is this kind of hope at the end with the next two generations, with Kathy and Harriton. And yeah, and it is nice to see Harriton, like a kind of a nice little glimmer of hope for Harriton, and if I'm saying his name right, and Kathy. Um, but yeah, great novel, and yeah, Heathcliff is just such a fascinating, I want to say villain. But yeah, that's
Again, I wouldn't really classify anyone, physically as a villain. I just think
Ye-
yeah,
if to say that you would just have to blame the Victorian society that they were just born into.
I think it's interesting that you
right,
question why would he adopt or bring Heathcliff to his house. I think it's interesting as well because it seems so random, right?
Yeah.
I know where you're coming from. I also want to mention that our Jane Eyre in our chat just said something very interesting, which I think it jives a bit with what you guys are talking about, the second generation, and I totally agree. It's a bit of a hope-filled aspect of the book, yeah? And this idea of Heathcliff, almost like the story coming full circle. But Forrest and Brian as well next, but Forrest first. Come on
Yeah,
in.
just in time for me to sort of talk about what I think. And I think I'm going to disagree a little bit on more than one front. It's funny how we all get how we get different things out of this book, which is like a testament to how good it is. But like first of all, the to me this book, the real the thing that I like most about this book is the second half because uh just not only about the story of sort of like the generational the redemption through generations, but leaning into this to the love story and what the love story means, um is that I do think that the villain is Heathcliff. That's the first thing I'll say. I find Heathcliff to be the villain mainly because in the second half, first of all, I categorize him and Kathy's relationship as one not necessarily of love, but importantly a distinction of an infatuation. It's like so much so. I mean, the ending of the book and the exhuming of Kathy's body is like the most important part to that aspect. But in the thing that I like about Heathcliff between the first and the second acts is that Heathcliff, when Kathy doesn't end up getting with him. And by the way, Edgar Linton is one of my favorite characters in the book because he and Kathy love each other too. And I think Linton is also like he's a little what's the term? He's a little more principled. He's a little wiser.
He's more of a
Um,
gentleman, you would
he's
say.
more of a
More
gentleman.
of a
But
gentleman.
An archetypical Victorian gentleman, yes.
He is
yeah,
society and culture. I mean, I know the draw. There's a draw to Edgar as
Quite
well.
sophisticated.
and
Yes, but go on,
I
Forrest.
think everything Heathcliff has, he has forced it into being, right? When his girl doesn't get with him, he gets his money up. You know what I'm saying? He financed Max's, and he tries to come back and frame Mog everybody
He
until
does.
Kathy dies.
He frame mugs everyone, I'm afraid, actually.
But he the thing is the love that he desired of Kathy, he tries to force it into the next generation. And he that's why he marries Isabel, is to get closer to her, and he tries to get a love that doesn't come to him even though it's there. And that to me is the drama in the book that I like, that you can will anything,
Mm.
but if you aren't chosen, like uh Eris picking Aphrodite, you can't get it. You can't force that. You can't have it, right? And so, like, his response to not having it is to try to make, abuse, try to make people's lives miserable, and even exhuming Kathy's freaking body. Mm, excuse me for a sec. Um, and that's why I also like that even from I guess, children born of different circumstances with Linton Heathcliff and Kathy Jr. Um, they do find a love and choose each other, and it's one that it's the sort of the darkness of the past gets lifted in their relationship. Them going to that's the hope pill, the progress to the future. But yeah, I do think that Heathcliff's love towards Kathy is not is I guess, like I said, I see it more as an infatuation. So it's a vicious type of love, and that I do see Heathcliff as a villain, as someone who's trying to impose that, like everything else that he's gotten, everything that he feels, he has a chip on his shoulder, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that he has a chip on his shoulder, but I also I find it interesting that you would call him a villain, like straightforward, like it's like just directly, because I think if anything, the text is more ambiguous with that. I mean, yeah, like it's so easy to place so much judgment upon everything that Heathcliff does, and maybe we should. Maybe I am like Joyce Carol said. Maybe I am like Isabella, that being whipped
Yeah.
by Heathcliff and coming back. Like there is something
Yeah.
to it. Like I find him an endlessly fascinating
Yeah.
character, and there's something so interesting as well. We didn't even spoke about it that much, but I think Patty, when she speaks about her dream that she has, that she was in heaven, and that she felt completely dislocated, that she felt like she needed to come back, that her metaphysical unity was with the wildness, was with nature. I find that very, very interesting. And we know that Emily Bronte's favorite book was Paradise Lost. And I know I always end up name dropping Paradise Lost every conversation, but I had to, like, that obviously calls to mind Paradise Lost and The Fall from Heaven as well.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's automatic.
I mean,
It's so
like,
I
ingrained in my
also
I
mind.
imagine
Yeah.
Heathcliff in his
Go ahead.
mind was like thinking, like, because of all this material wealth, I imagine he would unironically say, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven."
The
Go
last
on.
thought that I'll have is something that I said with you in voice chat, that one thing that I love about this novel as well is that it gets to the heart of what it really means to be haunted, and what that is to
Yeah,
be encumbered by the past. That's where the ghost
absolutely.
story comes from. That's where the haunting is bothering everybody in Wuthering Heights, and that the past can't be let go of. That people want to make amends for it. They want to force it. They want what their idealized will of the past to come to fruition, and it
Yeah.
Yeah,
hangs over
there's
their
a
heads.
Yeah, and that's this aspect also in relation to the haunting, but even not as explicitly as Cathy and Heathcliff's ghost, but even this idea of the active memory of narrative, like Nellie narrating the past in a way is haunting her too, like it's still present in her memory. There's so many layers to that, I think, throughout the whole story.
I think a lot of my interpretation comes from my bias towards the second half of the book. That's where the gothic
Yeah.
really comes in for me.
But I also really love the second part. I think, yeah, it's interesting because in pop culture, really, the ingrained Wuthering Heights, if you to ask for people that haven't read the book, they would tell you the first half of the book. Like that
Right.
is the ingrained memory of the story. But I also think that the meat, the juicy
Yeah.
bits are in the second half. I'll have to agree with you, Forrest,
Yeah, it's
with
also
that.
very ironic
yeah.
that basically like the first half of like the story that people like think is associated with the book is also in the book itself simply just an afterthought in the context of what of Nellie telling the story, like the idea of this childhood love that grows over years and years, and like the tragic failure of Heathcliff not being able to get Catherine because like she decides to marry Edgar because of status and wealth. Like it's just basically like it's like almost like it's basically a chapter long. And like it's almost like completely neglected in the context of the entire story.
It plays on the tropes of a romantic drama, but like there's this there's this bitterness underneath the story. There's this it's almost a cynical novel. Not completely cynical, but like there's this real darkness and spite lying under all the characters' decisions.
Yeah, and interesting that you say that in Beneath as well, because even Cathy, when she describes her love for Heathcliff, she describes it as the rocks right underneath. It's this not so beautiful and destructive structure, but also quite necessary. I know Brian and Jane Eyre came in, so say Brian first and then Jenna next. If Brian wants to say
Hello.
anything as well.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. All right, this is my first time reading it, and I think similar to Gordon, I didn't know what the book was about. I guess before reading it, and I guess just because I I thought it was a romance, and I guess there's arguments for that. You guys make good arguments. What's it called? I saw the romance between Heathcliff and Catherine to be it like never moving past the juvenile like
Mhm.
infatuation phase. You know what I mean? Like even when he came back and got older, like because correct me if I'm wrong, but I never got the sense that it ever got like physical or anything like that. You know what I mean? Am I wrong about that? Or like I feel like that's all like maybe could be implied,
I
but
mean,
I found it
that
just
just
like
goes with a lot of what like Nellie says through her perspective, because we only
yeah,
because most of the story through her perspective. Of course, she's. I don't think, despite knowing them a lot, she wasn't. I don't think she ever was like truly intimately close with them, and
for sure.
that's what makes the story the story as it is, because she's only telling the story through the perspective of her own judgments of how she sees these kids.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
I think.
oh, go ahead.
Go on, Brian. Sorry. Go on. Go on.
No, I was gonna say a little joke, but it's like the heart of darkness of what's it called, romance novels. Like how we're having this event like narrated to us, and we're like there's a degree of separation. You know what I mean from it, and I don't know how we're supposed to like I w- I wonder what's the intention behind it. I think Forrest made a good point that it's like supposed to be on the theme of the past haunting her, and maybe that's why it's narrated to us. And Mrs. Dean, I think it's like shown she's. I kind of saw her. Oh, she's definitely like unreliable narrator, and I think she like instigates at certain points during the novel when she doesn't like have to, like when Kathy is in the when she gives her famous speech where she's like she's Heathcliff, and then she like it's saying that how she cannot be with Heathcliff and stuff like that, and he's like in the room, and like I think, and she like doesn't like tell Catherine that Heathcliff is there, and she kind of like do her inaction. She like wants this to like get out, you know what I mean? That and like that's what is the crux of him leaving. Heathcliff hearing that speech, right? So I feel like she could be a bit of an instigator. And then at the beginning of one of the chapters, she says something that made me laugh. Where forget what chapter it is, but she's like, "Oh, I'm the only person here that has like good morals or something like that or something." I don't know. That made me laugh because I'm like, I don't know. You're kind of an instigator too. Like when Heathcliff and Catherine, when he comes back and they're older and they're like getting along in the kitchen, she runs and tells Miss Linton that I don't know that they're like things are getting like spicy between them. I guess you could argue like she should have told them, but like, is it really her place to like get involved? Like, should she get involved? Like, how much should
Mhm.
she like affect these people's lives? So I don't know. I not that I didn't like Mrs. Dean, but I don't think I think she could be a bit of an instigator. And Heathcliff, he goes from I don't know if this has ever happened in a book that I've read before. I go from like sympathizing with him to kind of despising him, and by the end, I sympathize with him again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a bit of a roller coaster ride for me. You know what I mean? And I did like the second half of the book much more. I was kind of shocked that like based off the marketing of like the films and stuff, like the romance is like less than half of the book. You know what I mean? And like I was shocked to see that Kathy died in like in the first half. Of course the book starts she's already dead, but yeah, she like already dead halfway through the book, and I was like where's this going? You know what I mean? And then yeah, it's like the what's that called? You guys say the generational trauma. It's like all repeating, and it's like Heathcliff. Okay, he made his wealth and came back like the Great Gatsby. You know what I mean? And he's like, how do you get all his money? He's back, and it's just like he didn't have to come back. You know what I mean? Like he literally came back just to fuck everyone's shit up. You know what I mean? And it's like it's like pretty evil. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking of like the book is fucked. I thought the book was fucked up, and
It's still shocking. It's like, even though it's
yeah,
like really old, it's so shocking still, which is
yeah.
great. I think it's great. Yeah.
No, it was interesting. I loved it. You know what I mean? I was like, I couldn't get enough of it. I was thinking
Hmm.
of that Louis C.K. joke. Comparing like another like awful book in other ways is like Blood Meridian. Like it's super shocking, violent, and stuff like that. But I was thinking of that Louis C.K. joke comparing like Cormac McCarthy to Emily Bronte is like boys like fuck shit up and girls are fucked up. You know what I mean? I was like, I, like I had like a
Uh,
visceral reactions, even more so in this book because of course like violence and stuff is like it's horrible. You know what I mean? But there's something just more tangible about like some of the stuff that happens in this book and maybe stuff that's like overlooked that people don't even realize to like maybe this day, like how like you raise a kid and you imprint all this shit onto them. You know what I mean? Or stuff happens as a kid, and then they take that into their next life, and then they repeat it. You know what I mean? And at the end, like that's like overlooked all the time. I don't think people talk about that. You talk about generational trauma, people scoff. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Um, and by the end, I there is that hope that Kathy and Harrington like are breaking that cycle. Hopefully, you know what I mean? But yeah. Oh, and the Wuthering Heights, like the gothic nature of the oppressive, what's it called? What is it? Weather, the atmosphere, and everything. It makes me think of. I always think of The Shining. Like, is the place haunting people, or is it the people already like fucked up? Because I thought it was interesting. It's like so Catherine, when she's a little girl, she gets sick, and then she go. That's where, and then or like where they get locked out, like early in the novel, Heathcliff and Kathy, and that's where they meet the Lintons, and they don't take in Heathcliff, he's a colored boy or whatever, and like a slave, but then they take in Kathy, and like this is the way I saw it, is like she brought the sickness of Wuthering Heights into the house, and it killed those like parents that were like good nature and taking her in and try and be like nice to her. You know what I mean? I don't know. I thought that's the way I saw it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. I think that's a lot of the main points. Oh, yeah, points I got out of it. Oh yeah, and like yeah, I felt bad for Heathcliff in the end where he was like where she was like Mrs. Dean was saying like how you look like a demon, and like she couldn't like or like what did she say, like he looked like a goblin or something, and he was like a husk of a man, and like I I don't know, I reread it that part a couple times, but is he did he commit like suicide or did he just die? I kind of got the impression that he committed suicide, but I'm not like 100% sure. But yeah, I guess like his revenge, his like lust for revenge, like just made him a shell of a man. And like, what I
Yeah,
mean, once he basically got everything he wanted, he just like that was his whole purpose in life, and he couldn't like there's like nothing more for him to live
yeah.
for, I guess.
I'm inclined
There's
to
And
a certain
believe.
emptiness. There's a certain emptiness in
yeah,
Heathcliff in it, like a constant search that ultimately will never be fulfilled, because he even talks about the idea that everything reminds me of her, literally. Like this idea that everything around, there's a level of this obsession that ultimately ends up consuming him. I find it interesting that you question the idea that if he killed himself or not. I never thought about it from that perspective, but I suppose in a way, even if he didn't, there was a level of obsession that still you could argue, like, from that perspective as well.
Something. Yeah, go ahead. It says something like, I don't have the book with me, but it's like, I kind of get the imagery of he like slit his wrist, but she said something like there was no more blood left or something. Like, so I don't know. I got the impression that he may have split his wrist or something.
That's why I'm inclined to believe, like, I think it goes well with the rest of the tone of the novel, of how I think it was like a natural cause of how he basically allowed himself to decay, like his whole body, his whole soul. It
was a spiritual surrender almost, isn't it? I think.
As like I think it's just a very romantic notion of like being completely heartbroken, of your soul being evaporated by all of the sin, the darkness, the obsessions you've had just completely consuming you, that at this point in his life when he almost has nothing, I think especially, after he sees Harrelton and Kathy have an actual genuine love, like realizing that it's basically a parallel with himself and Catherine, like Catherine Senior, that like there's that type of actual love is possible. So the fact that
envious.
From a simple level, he's envious.
Yes, envious.
But I think simultaneously envious, and I kind of think there is a side of him that is happy for that.
I'm gonna put the ball in Jane Eyre's corner with that, because I know she came a long time ago to speak, and I want to hear her opinion.
Yeah.
But just really quickly, just to close what Stephen said, I think there's also an element of like eternal recurrence, not just like the generational trauma, but like this idea of, I don't know, like how can something repeat endlessly? And I almost like the foundations of history. But let's go to Jane Eyre, and you don't need to feel pressure to reply to what I just said, Jane Eyre. Just come on. I want to hear your opinion.
Hello.
Well,
hello. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard somebody else. Hello. What I wanted to say is, I wanted to start actually again talking about Heathcliff, because he is kind of a main character. But I do think it's interesting that people kind of like, especially, okay, I don't want to bring up the movie too much, but it really did bother me in the movie that like he starts from like the bottom and stays in the bottom very often. But like I think what makes Heathcliff so interesting is actually that he was brought in by Mr. Earnshaw, and then he actually was pampered for a while and preferred over his own biological son, and he had a taste of privilege. And I think that actually makes him so much more interesting, because it kind of like fuels his rage later when Mr. Earnshaw sends away his son Hindley to college because he's like, you're abusing my favorite, so fuck off. And then he dies, and when Hindley returns, he's like, I'm taking out my anger and my frustration on Heathcliff now. And I think that's basically like he experienced both the lows and the highs of, paternal or familial relationship in this case. And in that case, like Catherine taking his side, I think that was like the closest thing that he had to love after Mr. Earnshaw died. And I do find it interesting that like Catherine seems to be the only person in his life that he cared to show, how should I say this, like to show some sort of like softness. Because one thing that I found really interesting in the book is that there's a favorite bird of Catherine's, which is like the lapwake, which is a bird that occurs in the moors. And Heathcliff likes to hunt, but that's the only sort of bird that he actually doesn't hunt, because he knows that that's Catherine's favorite. But at the same time, in regards to whether Wuthering Heights is a love story or not, again, one could argue that it's a story about love. But at the same time, I would say that like we're kind of like mistaking, or this is how I would argue for it, that in this case, Heathcliff thinks he's loving Catherine, but what it actually is, it's, again, I agree with Forrest, it's a type of infatuation or possession of Catherine. So much so that he's basically like, if I love somebody, it's almost like a self-sacrificial act that, if I cannot have them, I still want them to do well, because that's, I basically sacrifice my own well-being so the other person can flourish. But in this case, Heathcliff really doesn't care. Like, he wants to have Catherine, and he'll do it at her expense as well. He'll torment her with what he end up doing to Isabella. And I think that's really like, I think Heathcliff does have like, I don't know if you could call him like a full-fledged villain, but I do think that like, even if he has like a glimpse of what do you call it, like, fair point, I get why you're upset, but he takes it way too far, by where he takes his possession so far that he doesn't even want Edgar Linton to be buried close to Catherine. He actually bribes the Undertaker to bury him somewhere else. And he goes as far as to, abuse Isabella, or abuse Hareton, who he hates because of Hindley. I think he just takes it way too far. And I think in regards to his death, that's my last point, is I think he died. I think his death is actually kind of like very poetic in a way that, like, I think his ambition to make the story come true through the children was the engine that kept him going. And when he realized that that was over because his own son had died from illness, I think that's when he started degrading, and he was basically like, I have nothing to live for anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, Heathcliff's death was I did want to touch on that a little bit, because he seems to die right as Hareton and Kathy start to fall in love, and I think his death is kind of symbolic in a way. And that's another thing that makes Heathcliff such an interesting character, is he's almost mythical, for lack of a better word, but not purely, because he is still a character with development, and he's like a genuine real person. But when true love and true hope actually shows itself, that's when Heathcliff dies.
I'm interested in the distinction that you guys are making between infatuation and love, and I think, as a Christian, I'm biased towards that as well, because there is our understanding of love in a very quite Western Christian, like, love is forgiving, love is selfless, love is patient, all of that, like, very biblical. And I think Emily Bronte herself was very kind of contrarian to the Christian values in some way. And I think that's why I'm sometimes thinking, I don't think she wants us to condemn Heathcliff straight on, but there are elements to what you guys are saying, which I have to agree as well, that there are. Like, I do have to make the distinction between love and infatuation, especially when it comes to this, like, this aggressive obsession, right? I think Karel wanted to jump in, and then Spencer next, right? Yeah. Karel? Can he hear us? Karel can hear us.
Oh no.
He says, be right back. Spencer, do you want to jump in? Then next, and then Karel comes after.
He will be sorely missed.
I mean, Spencer went as well. No, oh, he's here. Dum, 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 dum. Oh, Karel is back. We're having technical problems.
This time it's not you. Well, this time it's not you guys.
I know. It always has to happen once, right? Karel, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah,
Now
okay, so you go and then Spencer, let's do that. Okay. We can hear you, yeah.
Okay. So it was the first time for me reading it. When at the start of the novel, I really liked that it had, like, right from the start, a very strong metaphysical dimension, like how the Wuthering Heights is first described, how it's guarded by these angry dogs. And then Emily moves into, like, this writing style where I was almost like revulsed by the superficiality of the personalities, that there was no personal development. It was like almost like puppets floating over our character, like very flat characters moving around the theater. But then at the end, because of this, she could come back extremely strongly And like this, like in the end, or like the low point is almost like the end or the start of the second book. But it was like this composition that first is strong with a very strong metaphysical opening, but it is quite kind of dark in its description. Then go to really through hell, and then in the end show a way to exit it, both by cultivation, compassion, and also like recognizing love. And like this entire arc, like first starting in the metaphysical, then completely annihilating it and ignoring it for 150 pages, and then only at the end completely coming back extremely strongly. Like last 50 pages or something like that. And I don't think that she was really against Christianity, because like she really put on the sauce at the end, like remember this old book, perhaps things are not so bad. And also like if I look at the entirety of like the role of the church in England, there was like basically a priest, he married the son of Heathcliff, like without their consent, and it was like this revolting part against the institution, but she was not so revolting against the entire idea behind it. So yeah, for me, this entire arc, so starting in the metaphysical, going to hell, and then at the end releasing the tension, was extremely beautiful. But I have to admit, halfway I almost stopped because I really was horrified by it. I was like, where the hell is this going? But yeah, I persevered. Anyway, but like I now finally understand why it's a classic. That's-
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Spencer, do you want to jump in? Hello?
Probably same problem that your voice is not coming through. Just disconnect and reconnect, and then normally it's fixed. I know this problem.
He'll
I
come
wonder
back.
if
He'll
he
come
has
back.
push to talk on.
It always happens, guys. It's normal. We are used to it by now. Is it coming? Is it disconnected? Yeah, I think he's gonna come back in a minute. But yeah, to Carol's point though, just to keep the conversation kind of warm, I really do see that as well. Like this idea of the metaphysical is such a strong point in the book. Like way more. Like I feel like all those things were lost in me the first time I read it as a kid. I also think there's something to be said about reading this book too young. The themes, and I mean, we're talking about like there's no sex per se, but there is I believe there's a lot of platonic, you can call it platonic eroticism in a way, because it's quite distant from like reality of, I don't know, but I think a lot of the thematics of the metaphysical, the thematics of uh civilization and domesticity and the primitive, all of that, like now they're completely so fresh. Spencer, can we hear you now? Hello? I don't think so. Spencer.
Ah,
I don't know why it happens. Wait, should I try to mute him and unmute him? Maybe that will work.
perhaps.
Try it.
I'm gonna try. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think
there was almost
no, nothing.
nothing sexual in the book. I think like the only
No.
moment was like when he was like the description of the bed of Isabel and Heathcliff. That's about all. There were some small other items, but like
Yeah.
uh,
There's nothing really like direct, and it's funny because a lot of the adaptations, I mean not a lot, but like there is this like eroticism that is quite imprinted in the book by external like adaptations, and a lot of the cultural memory of the story revolves around sex. You know, I think I don't know how many of you guys watched what's her name, the Fennell, Emerald Fennell adaptation. It was
Don't know who that is.
horrible. It was so embarrassing. It was just embarrassing to watch. It was just very embarrassing. Like, and by all means, like, do adapt and do talk about, because she's talking about the memory of the book, like the idea, like almost like recalling the book from like her dreams as a child or whatever explanation that she gave. But yeah, it's just so, I don't know. The thing is, because a lot of people are gonna know the story from that version, you know.
Well, in
But it
her
is what it
defense,
is.
she did put the title in quotations.
Yes,
how
it's a cope. It's called a cope. She cope maxed.
how is Heathcliff not a villain? All right, he hangs a dog, and he's like, I'm Chad. You still want to marry me?"
He
To
bangs a
freaking
dog.
to Isabel hangs.
Yeah.
You know, he murks Isabel's dog, which Emerald Fennel.
The
Stick
dog
to
doesn't die though. The dog
Yeah,
doesn't
he's
die. I
not
want to make
dead.
that sure. It
He
gets saved, I think, by Catherine right before Isabel leaves.
yeah, and it's oh my gosh, yeah, I'd marry that guy. But
What's your
Oh yeah,
vendetta, Forrest, against Hiccup? I mean, we you would you
first red
marry
flag.
Edgar if you were if you had a
Yes,
chance?
I love Edgar, dude. I think Edgar is. I don't know. All right, this
We could have a fight
I'm
over a man, Forrest.
I
We could
I
have a
think
fight
I
over a
think I
man.
think I think I sense something racially insensitive about your bias against Heathcliff. You seem to not like the G words that much.
the Roma
Oh
and
my god.
Sinti.
Look, I know Heathcliff is a rapist and a dog murderer, but I don't know, Forrest.
Attempted dog murderer.
It's
But
the
he
bad boy vibe, guys. Like
not to
it's inexplicable.
He's an emo kid. He's just an emo
not
kid.
to steal Spencer's spotlight. I'll go, Spencer. Write it out, and I'll read it for you. Write the whole thing out, and I'll read it for you.
Yeah. Is it still no? Is it still not
I
working?
promise.
Spencer, you
Write
can
all your
type,
thoughts
and we're
down.
gonna read it. He's typing something.
And okay, good. And I'll be as dignified as possible. I promise. But in the meantime, while you get those down, um, yeah, yeah. Edgar Linton is probably my favorite character. I think Jane
Now what
Eyre.
to take?
Also, Jane Eyre brought up a good point, which is that I'll read your thing in a second, which is that originally Kathy's father actually like favors him and
Yes.
sends him and thinks that he's got the sauce, and then sends Hindley away to college. And that's really important. Not just like the taste of Heathcliff having a taste of what that's like in terms of the class dynamics of the book, which again the book is from 1847, so it's like, is it even Victorian yet? Right, we're like 10 years. Victoria's crowned in what, like 1833, and lives for 60 more years, something like that, right? Um, let me, and then before I continue, from Spencer, I love that Kathy's death is revealed at the beginning because it colors all the things she mentions throughout their story and makes it more haunting. That's true. I like that. What's that principle called? It's not like en media res. That would be just like throwing you in the middle, but the sort of flashback of her. She, we're already told Kathy's fate from the beginning. And I could not help but tear up with the intensity of their embrace in chapter 15. It's so heartbreaking.
Mm.
May I defend real quick Forrest's Edgar Linton
Yeah, go.
fixation? Because I think I
A
know what
unified front, I see.
I think what do you mean?
Damn right.
I think Edgar Linton also, like, as one, he's like a good father to Catherine Jr., right? And I think that's very
Yes, that's
important.
important.
That is why,
Very important.
exactly, because Catherine Jr. Is a a father's girl. I mean, not that she has a choice to be anything else, but still she loves her father, right? And 1 second, I'm sorry, I gotta. And another thing is that I think he shows a lot of emotional restraint, which is underrated. He lets a lot of stuff slide to the extent where some alpha males might consider him a little cucked, like he actually like tries to make Catherine as happy as she can. I mean, you know what I mean? Like inviting somebody like Heathcliff to their house is kind of like very controversial, especially for the time being. And I think that emotional restraint, that emotional and moral restraint that he shows is very commendable at the end, right? He's kind of like pushed to the extremes, in my opinion, by Catherine. And then when Nellie basically like instigates that little fight between them, I think that is like basically the maximum that he was able to endure. But I do think that emotional restraint is very commendable.
Yeah, I agree. I'm joking. Like, I actually like Edgar as well. I think he would be the mature choice of husband. And I have to say, like, the thing that you mentioned earlier that I completely glossed over, but it's so true. The fact that he was a favorite by Mr. Earnshaw, in a way, I think it gives him a sense of entitlement that makes him also hate even more the position that he sees himself after. So I agree. I totally agree with that. I think Jay will come next.
I just have a little context for the whole discussion, like one versus the other one. It's like choosing between, I don't know, like Democrats and Republicans. It's like way more choices. It's whole novel. The weird part about it is that how Catherine, the little one, the Kathy, she only talks to like 3 people. Like, yeah, maybe maybe it would be a bit better if we had like more characters, more people you could choose from, more things. Maybe in this, that drives me crazy in the whole book, that there's a lot of discussion, a lot of depth. But if you take a step back, they just marrying cousins for 200, 300 years. And then we kind of surprised, is it love, not love? Is it why Heathcliff is attached to Catherine? Because it's one of 4 people he ever met. And and that's like, okay, maybe it is love because nobody else ever talked to him. And this is his whole life, and this is the only person who doesn't trash back on him. Just so this I find frustrating with the whole book, and then with the whole discussion. But I'll just stop rambling.
I want to read a Spencer comment. So Spencer voice coming in. Spencer says, also, people's feelings on Kathy, not just Heathcliff. His background and motives make sense. His soul makes sense. It can't really make sense of Kathy having the same whole soul as him.
The
As she
same
just
hole
seems
as him.
as she just seems incredibly petulant for the most part.
But that's what I mentioned. They have the same life. They meet the same 4 people. They don't then do work. I mean, Heathcliff later he goes to the field and he does real work, but they don't do anything the whole time. Like they just sit there reading books. At some point, one person does not allow to read books. That's because their world is so limited and restricted. Like it's hard not to go crazy, right? Like it's
Yeah.
if you get a ghost and you get some obsession, it's way more interesting than anything else you're allowed to do. Like there's some gambling in town that you can go if you're a wealthy boy, but otherwise, yeah, there's the same soul because they have the same life, and it's not very rich, and they were not allowed to do much. And the same
I
for Edgar being a good dad.
have my own comments.
She never
Finish your
met
thought.
everybody. Like she was
Sorry, Scott.
restricted by the father, like almost as a prisoner. I'm like, good dad, yeah, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah, you have a
You
point
think
too.
you think they're trying to say something because it's like emphasized in the like second half that like a woman in like high Victorian society, whatever, really has like no rights, or it's like even less than like you're better off. You have more agency as like a peasant woman that can make a wage rather than being a woman of like
Oh boy,
wealthy.
industrialism, middle incoming. We start.
Yeah, and because the daughter Kathy can't even like inherit any of her stuff because what's it called? Linton, what's it called? Leaves everything to her firstborn son, and it's
Yeah.
like not even to her. She can't even like get anything. She's like, so do you think that's what they're trying to get at of why they're like intertwined? Because like a slave person, basically a servant, and her equal footing almost. I don't know. Just a thought.
I think the Earnshaws kind of sit very comfortably in that gentry class because they obviously not working class, but they are not aristocrats. Like so,
Yeah.
they are land only family. So and I think that's important because there's always like this fear of social collapse as well, and it is this incentive to social climbing. So they're quite in the middle, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's important to the role. Um, there's so many stuff in the chat. I want to just take a look really quick at what you guys are saying. I am overstimulated. Way. Oh yeah,
And I'll read
Paulina
this.
asked.
when you're
But
done. Go ahead.
Paulina just asked on the chat, but isn't Edgar a person who suppressed Catherine? When she stopped eating for several days, he did not care much that he did not see her. It seems like he did not support her emotionally at all. Yeah, I think there's something to be said. I don't know, like, because I think you guys are painting Edgar also as too good. He wasn't that good. He wasn't. I don't know. He's not.
No, he's
I mean,
not
that's-
that good
that's-
either.
Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to
Yeah,
make at the
stupid.
very beginning, is that like I don't see anyone as like a true villain. That's why like I think it's a very important thing just in fiction when you're talking about in literacy to differentiate antagonist with villain. Because antagonism doesn't have to mean the most like malicious people ever. That's where villainy comes in. True villainous characters are ones that actively go against the entire narrative. That's why like they are the main threat in a story. Whereas like you can say that about Heathcliff, but again, because I think it's also a story that relies on a lot of subjectivity and perspectives with many different people, not just of who we are reading in the story, but the people who are telling the story. That's why like I think the book's biggest triumph is that we as a reader, we come away with our own judgments, but that doesn't have to be the absolute correct judgments 100%. I mean, we can see Edgar, we can see Heathcliff, we can see anyone as in the complete right or the complete wrong, but like that's only our perspective. And that's only like Nellie's perspective. That's only Lockwood's perspective. That's only like everyone's perspective. And I think in order to really understand people, there comes a point where like there are many perspectives from many different people about one singular person, and that can mean that we can see their loving sides, we can see their villainous sides, we can see moments where we feel sympathy for them, we can find moments where we absolutely hate them, and that's where the big flaw in life comes, when you only judge people on one certain moment, where you only are going to judge them by how much they made you like really be attracted to them or despise them. I mean, which is like a life lesson in general, to be honest.
One of the greatest authors, and I'm going to say a sentence and then Jane and I will go. One of the greatest authors, I just to mention, also a Gothic author of this ability of writing from narrators that are like adjacent to the story and they may confabulate the stories, is Mr. William Faulkner, my favorite. I just wanted to say that. Okay, go with Junior.
What I wanted to say.
Go. Junior.
Go on, Gina.
Okay. What I wanted to say about my client Edgar is, I'm kidding. Basically, okay. I think Paulina said something very valid, which is that like it's weird that he didn't care about Catherine. One, I think this is also like a huge criticism against Nellie and her POV, which is the only story that we get to hear, is that Nellie seems to actually feel like a sort of resentment against Catherine that is a little underrated, I think, because there was a point in which basically Catherine was having a crash out and told Nellie, "You're just a servant. You just have to obey me. Like, basically stay in your place." And I think that really hurt Nellie because she basically raised her like her own daughter. And in that moment, she was reminded of her position as a servant. And I think later when when Nellie realized that Catherine was basically having, a little bit of an emotional cheating affair with Heathcliff because they were talking a lot, she told Edgar. And I think what Edgar's reaction is realistic, but also flawed, right? I think if you're a husband and you kind of like devoted yourself to a wife that you actually love, and then she ends up like emotionally cheating with you with Heathcliff, it is very like, it feels like a huge betrayal. And him kind of like abandoning her or giving her the silent treatment is very realistic. I never said that he's a perfect character. I don't think of him as such. And he's probably very boring. I mean, I think the two houses are actually representative of like, the Lintons are order. They're perfect, they're classy. But that's also the issue that Catherine has in that household, is that she craves that emotional intensity that Heathcliff has, right? And I think the way I see it is that, like, I think Edgar and Catherine were kind of doing fine with their perfect little, cookie cutter house or relationship. But then when when Heathcliff came, she kind of like had like intense nostalgia of that emotional intensity that she had with him throughout their childhood, right? And that's what kind of like brought chaos. And or I liked actually how one of the people, I think was it Brian, he said that like when Catherine was taken in by the Lintons, she brought in like the disease of the Wuthering Heights. I actually love that because I do think that Catherine and Heathcliff kind of diseased the Lintons with their drama.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point as well, because I agree. There's something even like Thrushcross Grange versus Wuthering Heights, even like imagetically, if you like try to conjure it in your mind, that you can really almost feel like a black and white image. Like, one civilization, culture, social order, and the other like this rugged, isolated, like really like primal place. I feel like in my mind, aesthetically, they're so different. And when you imagine Cathy inside Grange, sorry, you can imagine almost like this dark spa, like disease in the place. I like that. It's a good way of symbolizing it in a very
Yeah, and
simple.
it's externalized throughout the novel, which is really good use of atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say Spencer, what something that Spencer said, and he wanted us to talk about. It's actually a really good point here, where he said, "The love I feel like Heathcliff does not necessarily possess Kathy because he genuinely would respect if she loved Edgar, but he knows she doesn't."
Mm.
Hmm.
I think Kathy does
Mm.
love Edgar.
I think so. I think she. I
She's
think she.
in the
Yeah.
middle.
I think she's
What
kind of middle.
the point that I like is that to go on that one is that how if Heathcliff did love Kathy in our sort of, I have a point on this too, our sort of Western romantic aspects, he would let her love Edgar, right? He would be the dying, oh, if you love her, have that life, have the good one, instead of like wanting her to himself, to the point where he exhumes her body and separates her from her husband. But that's besides the point. um to the point of like all the way back to where you were talking, she says she doesn't, though, during the engagement talk, Spencer says, as counter argument to us, so arguing against myself. Yeah, I mean, I think that she didn't necessarily love Edgar Linton at the engagement. I think she's still torn all the time. She says she doesn't love him like she loves Heathcliff or whatever.
Mhm.
But I still think I still, like I said, I find the relationship to be one. She still does say that, end up saying that she loves him, but in a different way, and that's important to the novel. That's obviously important to her character as well. And but throwing this all the way back to what you were saying, um, about like our Western idea of love. I forgot who it was. It's funny that you say Western because that's true. Because when you see these Japanese stories about love, like how much more Eastern does it get? Rising sun and everything. But I forgot who it was. It might
It
have
was
been
me. It
Oshima
was moi. It was moi.
who said like, "Oh, love can be flower and roses, but why can't love be like blood and scars?" Which and he and that's why people call stuff like Tetsuo the Iron Man is actually like a homoerotic love story. Or
A stretch.
um there was another one that was I'm forgetting which one it was that they were saying was a love story. But just that quote was interesting, and the differences of love between the Western and the Eastern world, of this pain, this suffering is love. Why can't this be love? This scars and blood. I remember blood being mentioned. But
There's
yeah, I just wanted to bring that up also.
There's something also of the, because we're talking about the idea of like generation and the passage of time, and even the way that Kathy describes the love. I just brought the quote. I just had to pick up the quote. She says that her love for Linton is like the foliage in the wood. Time will change it, so she's well aware as winter changes the trees. But her love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. So is this idea also the passage of time, unchanging love? And I don't necessarily know of love that is like, I mean, because unchanged also means that it will never grow, in the sense of like
Isn't that literally
transform, you know?
like a
Yeah.
Platonic reference? That the substance underneath, right? Wouldn't isn't that
Mm.
an actual sort of I'm just mind throwing mind darts. Continue.
Or it's a
No, yeah.
tension between the rational and the raw element. Like Heathcliff symbolizes one thing, it's like the undomesticated raw power, where Edgar is more like the domesticated civil aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a point I wanted to make. I wanted to like tie in a couple things we were mentioning earlier. Primarily like what Esteban was saying about like, just how all these kids, like the different perspectives, and how all these people do evil things, but they're not completely evil. We see that where that comes from. I like the moment where Nellie is looking at the guidepost, and under it she's reminiscing about her childhood and her childhood friends, and collecting like snail shells and pebbles. And then she goes to Wuthering Heights and she sees Harriton, like really the only Earnshaw that she felt close to, and then he just doesn't even recognize her, and he curses her and throws things at her. And it's really heartbreaking. But I think tying those two moments together just really shows just the innocence that everyone comes from, including like that every character in this novel comes from, whether it be Hindley or Heathcliff or Catherine. Um, and that's shown in the scene with her, the nostalgic scene looking at the guidepost, and then her going to just what other people, like whether it be their authority figures or just the class system, what it's turned people into. And I think it's a great representation of just how all these people get warped. And it reminds the reader to sort of keep that in mind, that all these people, they were people before they were degraded and deteriorated. And yeah, and it's quite tragic in that way when you think about it, especially when you see it happening so young to Harriton.
I think that lines really well in with this Spencer thought, which he says is his final thought. So from Spencer, my final thought on the images of the book: the way Heathcliff dies reminds me of a dog that lives longer than his master and dies never moving from the master's grave. He'll always be her accursed servant.
Don't they say something like that, like to Heathcliff, like he should go and like die on her grave or something, like go and lay there or something? Am I mixing that up? But don't they, like, someone says something like that to him? Don't they? Or am I wrong?
At the end, he confesses that he went to the grave and he actually did that.
No, yeah, but even before that, I thought someone said, "Why don't you go like lay on her grave and like a dog or something?" I don't know.
I'm trying to
Never mind.
think.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Even that though, like even if that wasn't a, I think there is that's tickling my brain. I think there was a part in there, but
Mhm.
the imagery of, the only thing I'll say, I'll push back on the idea that Spencer said about the dog, is that yeah, but there's also like there's obviously loyalty in that, but you have to think of like more of an innocent character for a dog. I think maybe it's just my vision of a dog. It's like super innocent, and the idea that he is there at the master's grave.
Oh,
I couldn't see Heathcliff like that, just because of like I wouldn't see him as that innocent. Maybe a wolf, but not a dog. I don't think so. Because there's something quite
But I get,
predatory about
I,
Heathcliff.
I guess a dog is only as violent as they're brought up to a certain extent, right? And
Mm,
if he was like, and all the dogs are violent in the beginning that we see, they attack Mr. Lockwood, and since he was like beaten down his whole life, I don't know, just for
yeah.
the sake of argument.
No, but
And
yeah, there is a point to that. Yeah.
yeah, and what's
I,
it called?
yeah.
What
Go ahead.
what was interesting that I don't think it was revealed until the end, but like how I think Heathcliff says how much Harrington looks like Catherine. I don't think that was
Yes.
ever mentioned until the end, and I was like, oh shit, is that like part of the reason why he's so horrible to him? Like at first, I think it's like it was more implied that it was just revenge against what's his stepbrother's name? I forget his name. Starts with an H too. Harrington's dad or whatever. Hindley, is that his name?
Hindley. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Hindley.
Hindley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hindley.
Yeah. At first, it's just I took it as revenge on him, and you could, yeah, arguably that's what it is. But also, like how much he looks like Catherine, more so he says than Kathy does. You know what I mean? He said Kathy has her eyes, but what's it called? I do think he says they both have their eyes, but Harrington looks more like her. So it goes back to that hunting. You know what I mean? He sees her everywhere. You know what I mean? And at the end, I guess it's a happy note, right? That it's stated that their ghosts are seen together, right? Cliff and Catherine's are seen on the moors or whatever, like by like some past like a kid crying. I think Mrs. Dean says she sees like a kid crying with two lambs and a sheep. And he said he saw like two ghosts, right?
Yeah.
At the
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
So yeah, it's supposed to be like I guess it's a happy ending. No,
Sure.
you don't think so? I
Or
don't know.
is well, let's debate let's
Hopeful ending.
debate that actually. What do you
Yeah,
guys
don't
technically,
know.
think?
if you're a ghost, you gotta wander the earth, right, for your sins. You don't have satisfaction. You're stuck in the middle,
Yeah,
right?
they're both in purgatory, basically, in a way. I
But
guess.
Kathy also does say
Limbo. There you
but
go.
Kathy does say in the dream that she had a dream that she was in heaven or with the angels and she felt super isolated and she wanted to come back. So I suppose
Hmm.
there is an element of that perhaps being a happy ending through that subjective lens.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I couldn't see it. Like I don't know. Do you know? Funny enough, I watched again as well the Laurence Olivier adaptation, and the last shot of them. I don't know if you guys watched that adaptation. It's so beautiful. Them walking in the moors, like just the silhouette, like exposed, like on top of the nature of the landscape, and then them walking.
Hmm.
And I was like, I know the story. I know everything about this book. Like I have read it many times, and I cried so much in the end. And I at the same time, and I was saying to Lily, it's like, isn't it horrible? Like honestly, they are in a way in purgatory. They're trapped in this traumatic like place within their emotions, and we look at that and we whip. Like we cry, like it's the most
Hmm.
beautiful thing. It's very disturbing as well. There's something quite disturbing about
The
feeling like
best
that, you know?
emotion, complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that there's two things that I think we didn't talk about yet. One is that I think Emily Bronte is coming also from a place that she describes the landscape not as it's a. I mean, she speaks beautifully, like the book is written beautifully, but I think it's more dealing in the realm of the sublime, in the sense of like there is something also quite scary about the landscape. It's not just beautiful. It
Absolutely.
moves you
It's
beyond.
sublime. It's
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also something else I wanted to ask you guys about because I have a couple opinions about it, but I just don't want to jump in and just say right away. There's something interesting about Linton, Heathcliff's son, being such a weak child. Symbolically, I mean, there's something interesting about his frailty, being the son of someone that has such strong will, someone that has a physically imposing figure. I find it very interesting that Heathcliff's son is as weak as he is. You know,
Yeah.
like frail. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the second half, like we've talked about so many times before, is about this sort of like how these generations overcome the past, and they in one aspect recurrence, but also in evolution, the frailty of the sun, sort of coming from the birth of an unrequited love. He's not his son, you know what I mean? Even though he is, he's not the son he wanted, so to speak. Oh, hello, did I cut
Yeah,
out?
yeah.
Oh.
No, we
Hello,
can
we
hear
hear
you.
um
you.
that's what I think when I think about what's his name, Linton Heathcliff, his birth and even his life. He's nothing like his father, and that's why he gets with Kathy Jr. Another reason I think Heathcliff is the you know what do I say, villain or antagonist, but uh the 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 other thing. Well, let's stay on this topic first before I move on to another one.
Hmm.
I think the other
Linton
reason
Heathcliff.
the other reading could be is that you guys get a chance at the happy ending or to alternative life if people like Heathcliff are not there. Like if they don't have the power, if they're weak, like if and then you get a chance to be to be happy and choose your life and choose it. But if there are people like Heathcliff, that's it. Like you don't get a choice; they're gonna choose it for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
I
there's
think.
also a bit of
Go
an
ahead.
irony in Linton's frailty. There's something ironic about it. Like I can't quite pinpoint, like, because even in his revenge plot, like Heathcliff, ultimately his ultimate pawn, which is his kid, is such a weak kid. Like you could never like be. I don't know. There's something quite interesting about that.
I think it's also sort of not just a testament to how he's different, but and from, let's say, an undesired love. Probably more importantly is that he's like like an unloved child. He's abused and unwanted, but he gets he's different from his father. I like what Gordon said, that his name is literally Linton Heathcliff, which
Yeah,
implies that he has no identity or agency of his own.
But at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time, also you can say that with Heathcliff being the son being so weak, he still served his purpose well, and he still did the purpose. Like there was some bumps at the way, but he still served the purpose. Even with these weak cards, Heathcliff also manipulated in the way he wanted. He did the marriage, he got the mentions, he got what he wanted, regardless of his son
yeah.
abilities.
For me,
I,
it
I
was
feel
also
like I feel like
motive
Linton. Sorry, I
that
feel like
connect.
Linton is like this chaotic amalgamation of the Lintons and Heathcliff personified. Like he is just all their negative traits, and I feel like that's why he is so weak and why he ultimately meets a demise.
For me, there was like a correspondence between Edgar and Linton. That like a typical problem of aristocracy is that the child is often meek. And then you have kind of like the Heathcliff element, which is like the very destructive but rejuvenating part of it. But alas, the son of the wild beast are also often turn out weak. And this is like this entire churning of aristocracy, which is like, a very old motive. The third
Yeah,
generation, as they call it.
the squanders of wealth.
yeah. I was gonna say as well, like a representation of an end of an era for that as well, for those people and that kind of class as well, isn't it?
I see
Like
that.
almost like it's thinning out of existence, quite literally. I really like what Gordon said about the Linton Heathcliff name as a signifying of his lack of agency, his lack of identity, and there's something also that because we talked about love. Is this a love story? Is not love story? I think we're kind of in the middle with that. Ultimately, I think all of us agree in a way is dealing with the passions. Even from the
You can
perspective of
agree
like,
it's about love.
yeah, and we can all agree that is about love. Gone, Steven. Yes, like you said earlier. Yeah. That's the idea of the doubles, the idea of recurrence we kind of touch upon very briefly, which I think they are all elements of the sublime because there's something about you couldn't say it's hard to call this book beautiful, right? But at the same time, you have to call it sublime. Um do you guys feel like I think me having read that very young and reading it again, as I said, is just such a different experience. There are certain books that I think you can really enjoy it more once you're more mature, like have a bit more life experience. But at the same time, if you think about Emily Bronte and how old she was when she wrote Wuthering Heights, and the fact that she had a very isolated life as well.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to think about that because I feel like she had such insight into human psychology, even before everything, and just based on like someone being so isolated, I find it very interesting, very intriguing.
I,
um
th- I think Jane Eyre will correct me if I'm wrong, but I also wanted to talk about this. I think the treatment that her sisters gave her, like from what I understand, she was like the outcast. They were all authors, obviously. Uh,
Yeah.
Obviously Anne Bronte for Tentative Windfall Manor, Charlotte, Jane Eyre as her most famous, and then
I think it's overstated. She was not being bullied because she was different. That didn't happen. I think they were just correcting each other, or they're just being like criticizing each other's work because they were like all writers. I think that's usually overstated because it's like I don't know why they do it. I think they think that like all the other sisters were jealous of
yeah
Emily, but I don't think that's true.
yeah, I don't think that's true. I think I agree, Jana. I think one of the things I find interesting is that when you read about Charlotte, apparently people say that she was like not very proud of Emily's work, but I just think that they had a different perspective, not necessarily
Yeah.
that she was against her perspective. What I do know is that she corrected little bits of her book after, right, in a second edition, I think, to try to make it a bit more readable for people in the South because a lot of the Yorkshire accent was lost on them, which is she wrote very like heavily at first with, like, which is interesting. But I don't quite buy this idea that the sisters were envious of each other or that was some sort of beef
Yeah.
within them. I
I think
think
you said it
yeah.
best, where it's just a different perspective. It just shows.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just need to read their literature to see like how different the perspectives was and how I imagine they had disagreements and just the aesthetic philosophies. Like it
like Jane
reminds
Eyre's a
Yeah.
love story.
like yeah,
All right.
it reminds me
More.
how like Forrest said this a long time ago when I mentioned one of my dream projects in some way is to make some sort of biography on the Boulanger sisters, and Forrest recommended I look up a lot about the Bronte sisters because, like, Forrest said, like, what I said about Lily and Nadia reminded him a lot of particularly Charlotte and Emily, and I can definitely see that because I mean, there's like a stereotype you can make of how, just like Emily, Lily Boulanger was this great child prodigy. She was the first woman to ever get the Prix de Rome. She was so young. She died at like in her like early 20s, and like then like her elder sister was in grief and became stubborn. I mean, she was like a very deeply religious person, a very, very solitary person, but she was also someone that I think was very loving, very caring, and very considerate. That also doesn't get talked about as much. There's a lot, much like the characters in Wuthering Heights themselves. There's a lot more nuance. There's a lot more poetry between the lines. Much more that, and then just like it's very much so. Don't just ignore the forest for the trees type of thing.
Yeah, I think Charlotte wasn't a very ambitious person, and I wonder if we even would be reading Emily's work if it wasn't for Charlotte also going out there and being ambitious. Because there's
Yeah.
also something to be said about that. Because people tend to say, "Oh, there were like there's a jealousy there." I don't believe that at all. I don't haven't read anything by Anne. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her.
Jen
I did.
Jen
Yeah,
Eyre
I did.
did.
Yeah. So how is
I,
it?
I actually find it very interesting. So before I even talk about that, because I find that very interesting, is that I think it's kind of like poetically tragic that all the Bronte sisters kind of died because of their environment. None of them really like. I think only Charlotte reached the age of 30, and all of the other ones died really prematurely because I learned this. Apparently, the place that they were living, their source of water was very close to a graveyard, and basically like all the dead bodies were seeping into the water supply. And I think their dad was always like going around to places because he was working for the church. And I think it is like theorized that led to their early death. But aside from that, I find it interesting. So like Emily, I do agree, wrote like the most rebellious book, but I think Jane Eyre is also underratedly very rebellious as well. If you really
Oh,
read
yes.
between the lines, it's very, very, very rebellious. But Anne, from all of them, I think Anne Bronte, she also wrote a book ahead of her time, which is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which is about a woman that tries to separate from her husband. But the more you go, like Anne is very Christian, and she's definitely like the most what should I say, like the greatest of all Christian girls, because her character in The Tenant of Wilfell Hall is very like, it's very much about like enduring like moral endurance in a time of like, where basically like you cannot leave the duty to your husband even if he sucks. And that's kind of like the most commendable thing that the main character does in Tenant of Wilfell Hall. That's my opinion. I mean, other people might have a different reading of it, but yeah, like her character, she kind of like persists through a lot of struggle. And what's commendable about it is that she basically refuses to leave him or cheat on him with a better man.
There's a very Christian perspective indeed. Very different. A very good Christian girl. Yeah, I have to read it, to be honest. I'm so like, I never got around to do it, And I also think Jane Eyre is a very rebellious book in its own right. It's just extremely unique as well. I think it's just because Emily, there is something mystical about her, something quite dark. I think what you said about if that is true, that the water was poisoned in some way by the graveyards around, that is so symbolic and goth. It's very interesting. I'm gonna get around to look at that. I think we are close to potentially Luz and I could take a drive around there, but I heard that because of Emerald Fennell's film, tourism in the area is probably unbearable now. So probably next year, once people forgot about the film and they have something else to obsess over.
Like they
And
always
that's
do.
a great segue
Go
to
on.
Fennel's film.
You really
Okay,
want to
let's
talk
go.
about it?
We have to. It's like group therapy at this point, right?
It's already just torture just hearing this movie.
Have you guys watched it? We watched it when it premiered here. It was like,
Just got done watching it.
I've seen clips while I was working at my theater.
I've seen clips.
Yeah, I've seen
footage.
Yeah,
I
I've seen
don't
There
so
were many
much.
times where I told Ford, where I was like,
I-
I gotta leave. Like, I can't watch this. I was like,
Did you end?
No,
Yeah,
So
we
bad.
watched it at the end.
I shared
Lewis
a
and
pirate.
I?
I shared a pirated copy with you, Forrest.
Yeah,
Didn't.
Esteban got me with no money in the pockets. Were you saying?
I was gonna say Lewis and I, we went, and then I said to him, like, just before, we were counting, like, it was mostly women, like front groups of women. I'm not judging, but just a little
Groupies.
bit. Just a little
Just
bit.
like some
But-
groupies.
but honestly, the giggling was so interesting to observe. I know that Louis is like, that's not interesting. If he was here, he would say, that's not interesting, that's predictable. But I said to him, I bet people are going to be giggling. And they were giggling and laughing at parts that weren't funny. Like, I don't know, I felt the whole thing was so weird. It was such a weird experience watching in the theater with like,
Oh yeah, I've
people
heard
that-
laughter.
and then-
I've heard laughter in the theaters that I was working at. Like not just women, men and women were just laughing at parts. So I'm like, this is the most unfunny shit I've ever heard in my life.
it's unfunny. It's she's just not very good. Like, that's the thing. Like, the thing is, I know that people like to hate on people now, and we always get this. How do you say? I forgot the words. People think that Louis and I like to hate on modern cinema and contemporary cinema. That's not true. Like, we would love to rave of things if they were good. Like, and we often
There's
do when
great
they're
films
good.
every year. There's great
Yeah.
films
There,
every
there
year.
might be a
Wuthering Heights
watch.
isn't one of them.
There might be a watch along to a film that came out like last year on the
I
Discord.
heard of that.
In 1 week from now,
Ah,
from the year of our Lord 2025, from
Amen.
China. Oh my god, I must be a communist. I must be a Maoist. I must be so woke that I'm endorsing China. Wow, guys.
you're the opposite of woke. You're like
Well, you are
hardcore
Chinese,
authoritarian. Yeah, I'm excited for that, to be honest. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we are very happy in this community, and I think I'm speaking for all of you to rave about things that are great, even if they were made today. The problem is that it's harder and harder. Like, it's just
Yeah,
getting
it's
harder.
Yeah.
It's like, if anything, it makes me very cynical when people say, oh, there was like such nothing but garbage every year. When it's like, you're just listing off all the blockbusters and nothing that came out even in the quote independent
Yeah.
scene. It's like,
Gotta get over the subtitles.
It's so frustrating hearing people who claim to love cinema and they're like, oh, every movie that came out now sucks, and then I'll like mention a movie and they're like, I've never even heard of that. I'm like, well, if you really cared about cinema, then you would try to seek out good movies.
exactly.
Yeah. Back to Ms. Fennell's
Miss Fennell?
Wuthering Heights.
Sentinel.
The thing that was I think the most disappointing thing to me is kind of like what I elaborated to you, because I saw it this morning, and it was that her director of photography. He's usually there. He's been on some bad movies, not just Fennel's, but usually those movies look good. I think he's a genuinely talented director of photography, including with Saltburn.
He's really good with color. He's a really good director of photography when it comes to color.
And this movie, he was muted and uninteresting. I also have to say they say, what is it? Bad editing is when you notice it. There was some noticeably horrible edits in the movie between actors acting that were jarring, noticeable. They weren't good for the performances. And I do agree. One of the only good things. It's funny because I did agree with Lewis's take when he made the deep dive, and I've talked about it before that I hated Del Toro's Frankenstein for a lot of the same reasons.
Sorry.
Comparing to the source material, it's like a dumbed down. It's like a kid's version. There's even a line like, "Victor, you were the
you
real
are the
monster."
real monster.
That was so ridiculous. Yeah,
another
but this is
Jacob
worse,
Elordi
I
point.
think.
One thing
Sorry.
that really bothered me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
No, I didn't. I thought you were done.
Oh,
Well, I just wanted to
my
say-
last sentence is just the only good thing I liked was Jacob Elordi. Go, JR.
I thought you said you liked it until a certain point, Forrest. What made you change your mind?
That's the same with Frankenstein with Jacob Elordi. Is I'm like not a fan of his, but then like every time he like I wasn't happy that he was the creature, but I was like, oh, actually he was pretty good as the
Yeah, I
creature.
really liked his performance.
Yeah, he's all right. I'm a Jacob Elordi hater. I think I should repent for that. He's not so bad. Like, I don't even think he's the worst part in Wuthering Heights either.
Yeah.
He's okay. He's okay as an actor. I feel like I hated him so much because there was a point that people were trying to make him branding
Marlon
him like the
Brando.
Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, he's not. One, he doesn't have the looks.
I mean, Louisa,
Sorry,
here's
he
the thing.
doesn't look like
Here's
Marlon Brando.
Louisa, here's the thing.
Come on.
Louisa, here's the thing. I think you know this too, how like this is just like people in the press who have the IQ of a peanuts. Like, and like they're always gonna show up. You're always gonna see headlines like that. We're always gonna be like vulnerable to hearing these comments. And ultimately, this is just gossip, which is like I try as much as that it pisses me off sometimes. Like I have to know like this is just gossip. This is just the stuff that always just is gonna happen. So I just like, you know what? Screw it. I have my own life because I love my life.
Before I open the Pandora's box of Elordi, what were you gonna say, Gina?
Yeah, when
I just I'm trying to remember. I think thinking one thing that really bothered me about the movie, or people that were actually defending the movie, which to be fair, they're in the minority. they were saying like, why can't you look at this movie as like a standalone? What if you look at this movie as like a completely like new thing? And I was like, one, it's called Wuthering Heights, but two, I feel like the most weakness of this movie is the fact that like, one, it's bad for people that like the book, because people that like the book will hate on it because it does everything wrong. But then also, if you haven't read the book, it's kind of hard to understand the movie.
Yeah.
Because like Nellie is like this Omni is like this weird character that just pops up. I don't even know her relevance to each of the characters' lives. She's just thrown in. I don't understand any of the relevancy of any of the other characters. Which again, like I know the background because I read the book. But if I hadn't read the book, I would just be confused. Like, what's the point of like this maid, and what's the point of like Joseph?
I agree.
And you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I agree. It's like I heard that too. I know it's the minority, but like people say, oh, but could you not? One, people can adapt whatever version that they want to do. Blah blah blah. Yeah, true. But like make it good. Fair enough. Yeah, if it's good, I'll be. Even if it was just about, it could be an adaptation that just focus on Joseph. I would watch if it was good. Yeah, like it's just because it's not good, and it's like very random. If you haven't read the book, it just simply doesn't work as storytelling. Like there's something. Do you know what it is as well? Like aesthetically, because I know that the DP, the cinematographer is supposed to be really good outside of that, but I think because Emerald Fennell, the editing I agree is trash, but Emerald Fennell, like her sensibility, her aesthetic sensibility is like mood board. Like she is inseparable from like a Tumblr mood board. Like that's why the film doesn't really match. Like the things in the film don't match. They don't have like an aesthetic thread, like connecting them.
Yeah.
It's very. It seems like she's just looking at the mood board and kind of like grabbing references here and there and willy nilly, and they just don't work for the themes that she's talking about. And there's this like weird dissonance between the aesthetic that she's trying to kind of conjure and the story. It's just so. It's unfortunately it's just poorly executed. That's it. And she's not as edgy as you think she is. Like what she did to Isabella. Yeah. It was so ugly. It was so fucked up, as somebody said in the chat. It was just not right. You know? Yeah.
One quick thing I wanted to say about the cinematography is like, yes, it looks good. It's visually appealing, but it's not purposeful. It's not intentional. Like you said, she's kind of Tumblr coded, but also kind of A24 coded. She's got to be like, oh, my movies have to be like colorful and vibrant, but like there isn't really a purpose to the camera work or even like the color coding.
Yeah.
That's what I always
have someone dying or really passionate. It's red. It's red.
It's so obvious. Like ever since I saw Promising Young Woman, I'm like, this is some of the worst directing I've seen this decade, because like it's like she's like a full-on example of someone who comes from that school of thought where like, you know, it's like maybe just because like in my mind I've become more enamored with a full-on like classical mode of storytelling, of how like that is seen like, you know, in the golden age of like truly like efficiency of making sure like, everything is like in like a beautiful tableau. And it's like fine, like New Hollywood came around and it's like you have more like experiments with editing, you have French New Wave, you have Dogma 95 handheld, but it's like this new age of filmmaking from these directors, most directors besides maybe like a couple, it's like it's such boring like film school level of just, hey, like let's not even try to capture the environment in which we're shooting the movie. Let's have just complete basic 101 coverage of everything. We get this actor, then this actor, and then the two shots and maybe a wide, and it's like that's her entire techniques, and it's like it's fucking shit. She's always been fucking shit, even on a technical level. It's embarrassing, really.
She overextends herself. She wants to come across as I think in Promising Young Woman it is very clear that she wants to come across as she knows more about that masculine world than she actually knows about, and it's very blatantly obvious in her choices in casting and so on. There's something about Wuthering Heights. There's one scene I really like, that shot where Jacob Elordi playing Heathcliff is like riding back to see her like when she dies.
Because it looks like Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, that's exactly. But you know what? I remember Louis and I looked at each other in the cinema and thought, this woman. I was gonna say this bitch. This bitch cut the scene so early. She should have. This is like the best shot in the entire film, and she just decides to just cut it short, like for some fucking reason that I don't know. Because she doesn't
It's
have any command,
she
like
has
of visual language.
she has no sense of pacing. Also, that's the main part.
Exactly. Yeah. No sense of
Especially like in
pacing, yeah.
Saltburn, it's like, oh my god, Saltburn was like such a big offender of that, where it's like it's so fast with such excessive use of montages. It's like, what are you doing?
Because we haven't spoke about the book in a while, I want to just bring it back to the book a little bit. If not, I was gonna say, you guys want to go to the hangout and we can continue
Bring
to
it back
trash
to the
camera for now.
I have one more
Bring it
thing to
back
say
to
about
the
the book,
book.
though. I do have one
Yeah,
more
let's
thing.
go. Bring it back to the book.
I have a
Let's
little
bring
bit
it back.
more too. So
Yeah, it's like, because I just want to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
like, my last thought is that I think
Yeah.
out of most of the books we've read, this is definitely one of my favorites in terms of style.
Oh, is it?
Like, in terms of style, not one of my favorites in general. Just, I love the style of how it was written. I mean, probably because like it's one of the most noticeable, but you know, like just lines like near the beginning where you have like he says how yesterday afternoon set in misty and cold, I had half a mind to spend it by study fire instead of wading through heath and mud to Wuthering Heights. It's like that type of description using absolutes, like not like the mistiness and the coldness. Just it's almost like it reminds me a bit of Shakespeare, of like in Macbeth, where like he says like how like was it like there's an idiot's tale of sound and fury. It's like these, it's like these pure absolutes of words, just almost like
A tale
pure,
told by an idiot, full of sound and
sounds of-
fury, signifying nothing.
it's so beautiful. I love stuff like that.
yeah, nobody writes like that anymore.
It's, yeah.
Do my core literature club version. we can rekindle that, guys. We can rekindle that.
Yeah. Maybe I'll write something like that.
Why not?
Well, how are you gonna bring it back?
We'll just write.
Well, no, I meant
Uh,
to the book.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
To the book.
well, like I
Yeah,
already
to
said,
the
like
book.
I love the writing style. Like, were you gonna say something, Gordon?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say was this is kind of going like way back to like the metaphysical or religious themes. There's a line that I really like from the book, and I've been thinking about it outside of the context of the novel as well. It's a line that Nellie says, where it's right after where Kathy is talking about how the angels would throw her out of heaven, and Nellie says, "All sinners would be miserable in heaven," and that's something I've been thinking about a lot more. Um, 'Cause, I mean, Louisa probably knows more about the theology than I do, but like heaven in terms of we see like in cartoons where like heaven is just this wonderful paradise where people party and every wish comes true for them. But in reality, heaven is more of just a place where you're just kind of in this strange, dreamy bliss where you're just worshiping the Lord for
It's
eternity.
vastness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's just
yeah.
pure devotion and you forget yourself. And I think that line of like all sinners would be miserable in heaven, it's like, you know, heaven is not a paradise. It's not a place where, you know, your selfish whims come true. There's a really interesting episode of The Twilight Zone actually that I think kind of deconstructs that. And
Where he's in hell and he gets everything he wants.
yeah, he thinks he's well. I don't
Yeah.
want to spoil it because it's such a good episode. But yeah,
What is this, Paradise
That's a good-
Lost?
he thinks he's in heaven, but yeah, it is something that like you know, like people who hold on to these earthly desires of their selfishness and their greeds and their obsessions, and like people like Kathy and Heathcliff, where it is just this storm within them. It's a storm that combines obsession and love and spite and anger and revenge and despair and anguish. And it's like, yeah, these people would not be happy in heaven. And I just look around the world around me and I'm like, how many people like, you know, they have these worldly attachments and they would also probably be miserable with the idea. I'm gonna be honest. Like when I first heard that, like as a kid, in like small groups or whatever, they're like, "Oh yeah, heaven is more like you just kind of sing to the Lord all day." I was kind of like, "Oh, that sounds kind of boring, like for eternity." but but yeah,
You
that's
like
that line has really struck a chord with me.
like I mentioned the eschatology of Christianity in the Karamazov video. It's like your soul is supposed to go to God now, but then when the ages of ages come, you get the new body in the new heaven and the new earth to then have it. You know, to live, yeah, in the new Jerusalem.
Yeah, and I
Whatever.
think that's why they're ghosts at the end because they couldn't let go of their earthly obsessions.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I think
passions, isn't
that's
it?
brilliantly put. With grounds her in the middle.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying like earlier when I watched the Laurence Olivier version. Like as a Christian, like me crying over the fact that I can see some beauty in the fact that they were like wandering ghosts in the moors. Like it was kind of like, oh wow, why am I? I mean, it is beautiful, and there's something quite. We do love obsessive characters. We spoke a lot about characters that have a last year's book club. We spoke a lot about characters that
Yeah.
will their existence or will change in their life through like just pure action and drama and all that. But there's something so dark about the ending as well, and it is weird to cry and feel the romantic tension of that, but also realizing that, oh no, wait a minute, that is not like that calls back to that what I was saying earlier, that conversation that when Kati says, that she couldn't bear herself in heaven. She didn't understood how she could exist there. So she felt like her place was back in the moors, was back ultimately in a unquiet state, right? Which is interesting because she's also a character that I couldn't imagine her serving the Lord, even metaphysically, because she serves herself so much. And even her fancy for Edgar, which we spoke about it so much, I think a lot of it is she has so many selfish inclinations. And it's hard to really like reconcile that with someone that will be able to even just exist in the bliss of like, just being quiet and just as Spencer said, like serving him and abounding by his mercy. So it is interesting to say that. I noticed that.
Then we also have the contrast of the old and the young Kati, the two sides of the same, depending on the circumstance.
My God.
Yeah,
That book's pretty good.
Mein Gott.
Pretty good love story.
Pretty good.
It's a great love story,
No,
you guys. I cannot wait to adapt it for the TikTok crowd.
Do you guys?
Maybe-
so,
maybe-
so steamy.
Maybe one thing that I can comment to what
Yeah.
Louisa just said is that, the thing is, I was actually thinking a little bit of the feminist aspect of it, which is that, like, in regards to upwards mobility, the only
Mhm.
thing that Catherine could have done in that time is marry Edgar in order to, move upwards in the social ladder. Whereas Heathcliff, he somehow managed to, escape the moors and come back wealthy. I mean, that's something that, like, only that is like a sort of agency that he has as a man that Catherine doesn't. And I think it's kind of like, of course, I as a reader judged Catherine back then the same as Nellie when she was like, I have to marry Edgar for my stability in life. But at the end of the day, she had no other choice. And if we really think about like how, we all know how the Dickens novels go, it really wasn't nice to be poor at that time, So in that case, I do think that there's also like feminist commentary about it, that Heathcliff has the agency to exercise his ambition, but Catherine doesn't. Her only choice is to basically sacrifice her love.
Yeah, and as I said earlier as well, like Charlotte Bronte, the sister, having been so ambitious herself, was also what made it that all the sisters would be so visible, right? Was also
Yeah.
her power of will, yeah. And It's interesting because I think it was Charlotte that she had to teach after, and she was there's like a letter to her friend, and she's saying, you know, like, must I be bound by these chains, you know, of this my social expectations, you know, because she wanted to write, you know. But this is about Charlotte, not Emily. But
Yeah, she was a
yeah,
governess.
yeah, governance, yes, perfect. Yeah, so it's interesting as well because I wonder if, like, was Emily Bronte born today. I don't think she might have called herself a feminist, but I definitely see how we can look back at the text and see elements of, even by the just looking at the disruption of civilization kind of thing. But I think it's more of that than feminism. But Steban, you had something to say?
No, I didn't.
No.
What was I whispering something? Did you hear me whispers?
Yes.
You've chopped on me.
Well, I got one last thing to say before, because I do gotta go. I gotta go to a baby shower right now. But just on a side note, this is like one of the hardest books to talk to someone about once you get to the second half, is all the names. It's just like Linton, but not that Linton. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kathy, no, the other Kathy. You know what I mean?
That's why
one of the hardest.
it's like in Barry Lyndon, where it's like Redmond Barry changes to Barry Lyndon. You know, it's like that type of thing.
Yeah, someone's like, "What happened to Redmond?" He's like, "He's still there." No, but yeah, I gotta go, guys. But it was nice talking to you.
Yeah,
to all y'all.
Bye, Brian.
Nice seeing you. Bye, Brian.
I got my own voice right at the end.
Oh
There
my
you
God!
go.
Yes!
Yeah. Oh my God.
I have to do a bunch of running around today because it's my oldest daughter's like 5th birthday coming up, and so I was like trying to do shopping with headphones in, but like Discord will not let me use my headphones and talk at the same time.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, it depends on the headphones as well. Like, if you have like really shit headphones, like, then it's an absolute mess.
I think it's because they have to plug into the USB port, and this phone I have doesn't have a headphone jack.
Oh, like,
And
you
it,
use USB headphones?
Yeah, like it's the kind of phone I have. They don't make headphone jacks anymore for some reason. What the hell? What
I
happened?
mean, because like we're in the new age where we don't even it's all Bluetooth now.
No, fuck these guys. I'm rebuilding my old iPod, and I'm gonna forsake this age.
Like, I still like have some like old ass like USB like AirPods and headphones like in my cupboard.
Anyways, I'm gonna fit in my last Wuthering Heights thought, which was that I love the way the book starts off. It's actually kind of funny because you don't get a sense of like how dark it is at the beginning, because like the darkness almost comes across as like over the top and comical, and the way Lockwood is describing his first encounter with Joseph is hilarious. It's like one of the funniest descriptions of a person ever. Like he looked like a person who needed divine intervention to digest his dinner or something like that.
That's nice.
But yeah, the second time reading the book, I only read it just like 3 years ago, so I can't say like my life changed that much to change my look on it in general, but I did really enjoy it.
What a great way to end off this book club, by having Spencer finally returned. A great climax indeed.
I was gonna ask, maybe it's a more appropriate conversation for the other show. Was that Lewis I heard?
Hey guys, what did I miss?
You only took him 2 hours.
Hello.
Fear not, it is I.
I just want to point out that Lewis didn't get as much as applause as Spencer did.
That's true.
That's normal though. People are tired of hearing me.
Lewis can translate like Joseph's fucking crazy northern Yorkshire accent for us.
Oh yeah, the Yorkshire lines.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm
Not
not
that
gonna lie.
Manchester or Stockport is like that close to Yorkshire, but
No, but there's like you don't have to go too far where you hear people like start having the accent.
Our cat's
Yeah,
from
yeah.
This way.
Yeah, one of our cats is actually from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
who would have thought 20 years ago we've been sipping on Chateau de Chastelet?
Also, let me mention,
Years ago.
we have British Highlands beautiful, expansive, sublime spaces, as Louisa would mention them, and not one border collie. That's
I
a
know.
travesty of the Fennel film. All right, you
I
need a
know.
border. Barry Lyndon has that when they're playing. What is it? Croquet. They have that border
croquet.
collie losing his
Yeah.
fucking mind in the grass.
You know what?
Reason
I'm not
number
gonna lie.
2000, why Kubrick's the goat.
I am a border collie owner.
In
So-
in the novel, some of Joseph's dialogue was kind of hard for me to understand.
Yeah.
So eventually, I just tried imagining Lewis. And I
See,
kinda
that's
helped
like
me
that's
with
it.
I'm
Lewis should-
I've totally matched it. Went on balls. So wrong with Sen.
Lewis would be a great Joseph in like 30 years when they do
Yeah.
another way
I was
adaptation.
I would like
trying
to
to
cast you as
imagine
Heathcliff,
like
baby.
a Cockney
No, no.
mixed
Trying to
with
cast you
a
as
Scottish
Joseph.
accent. That was kind of what I was trying to picture.
Literally, like I want to do like acting roles in the future, but I just want to do very, very chaotic people that don't require lines per se, just more insane vibes.
Just noises.
So just like the
I imagine.
just like how people act in a Zulawski film, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so this
imagine
is why
just-
we have to have subtitles while we're watching Cats, you know, because like I don't know. I thought that Daniel Blake wasn't that bad, but you know, like my family
my
are
God.
Geordies, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the real like indigenous British films. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is England or like freaking like
See,
No,
see,
Snatch.
for me,
Snatch
yeah,
is
no, Snatch is like its own thing because I mean,
That's
like,
great.
like
My God.
I can't remember if I told the story before of because like gypsies, you know, the term gypsy in the UK is completely different because we have like
Yeah.
Irish travelers.
Yeah.
But it's like it's this weird option. Like my family is Irish, but you know you've got Irish people, and you've got that kind of cadence with it. But when it's Irish travelers, they do sound like Brad Pitt in Snatch. It's like it's their own dialect. That not even Irish people understand them.
Hey, Kara, that's for me, man.
It's dogs. You're fucking around dogs. We're on tax face. We're trying to catch rabbit, and like I get it a bit, but most people don't.
Yeah.
It's crazy here in England though. You can go from like 5-minute walk and people have completely different accents.
Yeah, my friend,
Okay,
literally,
fine.
my friend up the road, like a 5-minute drive,
Yeah.
has a different accent than I do.
Yeah, definitely.
That
No,
sounds
it's not
really
an
shocked
exaggeration.
by- Yeah, because like if you hear like Western Canada into like Washington, like it's not like that really that different. Depending on how rural you go. But like I remember, like being in England, I'd visit my family who lived in a village just outside of Newcastle, and then you would go like down like 20 minutes to Prudhoe, and it was a very distinct accent that you'd hear from people in Prudhoe, and then you'd go to like a different spot, and then I'd go see my aunt in Durham, and like it's so amazing how intensely regional the accents are there.
Oh yeah.
Are we trying to migrate to VC?
Maybe we
Yeah.
should.
Can
I think so. We can.
Can we give a conclusion for the recording?
My conclusion.
because I wasn't here.
Go
Go ahead.
I mean, I think everything was spoken. I think it's hard to like condense it. I think we can just jump into the.
I can
Do
give
you
a
wanna
conclusion.
conclude? Do you wanna do?
Like,
Go
yeah,
on.
okay. Well, guys, we did another book club video that you're probably watching in like 2 weeks from now has been wrapped. So thank you all for listening. And yes, go subscribe to my channel, like Retro Esteban. Get me to 1,000 subscribers, please. I need money. Thank you. And yeah, like let's move, let's migrate. Not for you guys.
And also the House of Tabula. Just a quick shout out.
This niche channel called the House of Tabula. That doesn't really matter that much. Not really as big as mine.
I mean,
But
they
like,
didn't contribute as much. but
subscribe to the indie channels, okay? Thank you.
This is more of a chemotherapy retro Esteban thing, but I guess House of
What are you talking about? All right,
See
all
you guys
right.
in the hangout.
See you guys, in the hangout. Not for you guys watching, just for us. Bye.
Frame mugging you. Frame mugging you now.
What the fuck? Bye.